I'm here with Peter Mulvey. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this. And you chose a Raymond Carver poem. I got to tell you, I've been a fan of Carver for a long time. I bought this book when it was brand new on the shelves in 1989, and so I've been reading him since before then. Such a fascinating guy, known probably more maybe for his short stories than his poems, but wonderful poet, and we're going to get into that poem Happiness here in a minute. But if we can, let's start with a little bio of you. Tell people who you are. I know you're a singer-songwriter and you call yourself an almost poet, I think,
Yeah,
on your website, and I will put the links to your website on the show notes. But go ahead,
oh,
if you don't mind, just tell people who you are.
sure. I mean, I'm a city kid from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I grew up on the northwest side. Kind of impoverished neighborhood in the heyday of what the liberals would call integration. My parents were, like very activist Catholics. They met in Belize, what was then British Honduras, as volunteers, and they raised a family, in the inner city rather than sort of participate politically. They just decided to participate bodily.
Mm.
So I grew up there, and then was always pretty bookish, probably given that my father's family is Irish and my mother's is German, and they were Catholics. So just a very bookish kid, and got into playing the guitar. And I was always apparently raring to go. Like I played my first gig when I was 16, and honestly, way back when, like freshman year, 13 years old, freshman year of public high school, the professor has someone read the first page of Young Goodman Brown. And he says, "Close your books," and we all close our books. And he goes, "What color were the townsmen's clothes?" And we all start guessing, gray, brown. And he says, "Open your books." And Hawthorne had said, "The townsmen were gathered in their sad colored clothes." And he said, "There, like he made you, you're the one who painted the colors, and you're not wrong."
Mhm.
And I remember even then thinking, I want to learn how to do that. It's just a trade, the way a kid will be interested in motors or whatever. I was interested in the way words and sounds provoked emotions. So, became a singer and a songwriter. Early in my 20s, I moved out to Boston and started playing in the subways. Hilariously on topic, I would walk to the Davis Square subway station, set up my guitar and my suitcase for coins, and there were poems carved onto the bricks there, like Emily Dickinson and it was sort of classic short poems. You'd just wander around the platform and you'd find them,
What
and
what
then that
year?
was it. I was
What
ruined.
what year? What year would this have been that you were playing subways in Boston?
92, 93, 94, and then I got up and running and started just traveling, and have since then. God, it's been over 30 years that I've been traveling about as far west as Alaska, and certainly the West Coast, most of this continent, um, and then Europe. But again, like, for all that I've seen, like, I'm a folk singer songwriter, so I'm always just kind of in this little weird contiguous bubble of neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah. You share a lot with my friend Tim Easton. Have you crossed
Oh,
paths with him
I
a
know
lot?
who he is. We have not, unfortunately,
Okay.
crossed paths a lot, but I know precisely who he is, and
Yeah,
it's those are the conditions that will churn out
yeah,
a creature like us.
yeah. Uh, he was a guest on my other podcast, and he's scheduled to be a guest on this one coming up soon. So
Great.
cool, cool. I usually ask my guests, whether they're poets or songwriters, how old were you when you knew you wanted to be and I'll say to you, a singer-songwriter. It sounds like 12 or 13.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I just knew. I mean, corny enough, but you're reading The Lord of the Rings, or you're reading, science fantasy or whatever, and like there's a bard, and you're like, oh, that's me. That's what I'm gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And who were you listening to? Who really kind of influenced you, especially in the early days?
So at first I was into the Police, which I'll say Sting is a wonderful writer,
Oh yeah.
and he reads widely, and that was a big influence on me.
Yeah.
But then from there, I got into Rush, which in its own corny way is the same thing. Their lyricist Neil Part, reads widely, so literary pop music. But the first aesthetic that I saw, honestly, was the guitar player Leo Kottke,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because he's just clearly right. He's a deep thinker, a deep writer, and he got famous for being a guitar yaya. But his prose is outrageous, and his lyrics are outrageously deep. And that was my that's an oddball choice, but that was the guy where I was like, this is it. There's a row to be hoed here of
Uh-huh.
sort of the ordinary Midwestern guy, and one's own befuddlement with the complexities of the world you find outside the Midwest is kind of the secret ingredient. Like,
Mhm.
I'm still just a kid on a bicycle, like wandering around going, what's happening here?
Well, that might get us into Carver actually, because it sounds a little like Carver. I'm not sure I want to leave music quite yet, though. What has Bob Dylan meant to you?
Oh man, he is. I mean, he's one of those people that you cannot ignore because they have that union of the highfalutin with the lowfalutin, right? And there's a certain. He's better at artifice than I am. Like I
Well,
I
better than
watched.
almost anyone is. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I watched that movie. I watched that movie recently, the new one, and I think I'm kind of more a figure in the mold of Pete Seeger. Like I'm just out here trying to encourage everybody
Uh-huh.
and make a little sense and be kind. And Dylan, uh, I think just by his nature, he viewed that stuff that as just facile and easy.
Well,
Um,
and a
but
step toward
like,
to something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Dylan means the people that do that union of the high flown with the low flown. Some people have to do it absolutely on purpose. I think of James Baldwin, like if you would like to be nobody, be a gay black kid, in
In the
Harlem.
'60s. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
And so his lowfalutin comes, honestly, and his highfalutin comes from an absolute refusal to be dismissed or identified. But then Shakespeare would be, not to, yeah, well, let's just say it, like just a dude, just a Catholic dude, um, a glove maker's kid, a nobody. And that's why all of his, vaulted, this vault with fretted fire, all the gleaming architecture of the high flown stuff is great, but there's dick jokes in it, like
Right.
when the little gaggle of workmen get together, he's not kidding. Like those are also his people.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like, I think that's the thing toward which I always wind up gravitating. Los Lobos is one of the best examples of that. Like they have Cesar, who's just a blues guy,
Yeah.
and then like Louis and David, that writing team,
Uh-huh.
are like these Art Nouveau crazy, avant-garde warriors, and then they merge it with their own sort of conjunto stuff.
Right. Right.
And again, you have like the high and the low.
Yeah. Yeah. One more question before we move to the poem we're going to look at today. I'm down here in Texas, and Kerrville Folk Festival is happening right now. Just first weekend was this weekend. I'm sure you've been to Kerrville, yes?
No, I'm one of the very few who's managed not to go. 30
Really?
years and I haven't gone.
Huh.
I know I've got to go. One fine year I've got to go.
Yeah, you should. In my opinion, I hate to be, the guy who says, "Oh, back in my day, it was so much better." But back in my day, it was so much better. I,
Well,
I was,
yeah,
I was going in the '70s when it was brand new,
yeah.
and you know, backstage with Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and Ray Wiley Hubbard. And I'm sorry, back in my day, it was a lot better.
I'll believe
But
it,
yeah, yeah,
So I'm tangential to one of those guys. My mentor is a guy named Chris Smither, who is a creature of the Boston scene, but he grew up in New Orleans, and he was friends with Townes, and they were the same age. And
okay,
so, you
uh,
know,
yeah.
he saved Townes' life, and later he discovered that's just commonplace. A
Yeah,
lot of
a lot
people
of people
save
did.
that guy's
A
life.
lot of people did. Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a feeling we could talk forever. Let's jump to Raymond Carver, and you chose the poem "Happiness." Maybe, and I want to read it before I do. And then, by the way, I'm going to ask you to read it again. Do you have it in front of you where you can
I
read it?
do.
Okay,
I
great.
do.
Before I read it, um, I'm curious what drove you to choose this particular poem.
Okay, guilty secret. Um, I didn't know, I knew only that Carver was a short story writer. I'd read, 5 or 6 of his stories. I'd seen the movie Shortcuts, which is marvelous.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was courting. I was falling in love with my wife, and we were sending each other poems,
Mm,
as you do, which we should now, but we don't, as you
mm.
don't.
Well, we can start that again.
I know, right? We all should. It's like when you do these things in the limerence phase, and you should just keep doing them.
Yeah.
And she sent
I'm
me
sorry.
this.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to insert real quickly. That's why I'm doing this podcast because of the weird freaking time we live in. I feel like
Yeah,
we need to get more poetry in our lives, and that's why
yes,
I'm doing this. But anyway, back to your
absolutely.
story. So sorry to
Uh,
interrupt.
no, no, she sent me this poem, and it, it helped that I was falling in love with the person that sent it, and it helped that I I like to know who my friends share birthdays with, and it turns out she shares a birthday with Raymond Carver, the
Yeah.
25th of May.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Which
but
was
it
3 days ago as we're recording this.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
it just tore the top of my head off. It gave me that Emily Dickinson effect, when I feel as though the top of my head has been being taken off. That is poetry. And since then I've learned a bit more about Carver, and it his plain spokenness is clearly his first language.
Mhm.
Like that's probably close to how he would have talked if he had never worked as hard as he did,
Mhm.
you know?
And yet there's plenty of artifice there. People like him, and I mean, it's the comparisons are pretty obvious to people like Hemingway and Chekhov. I mean, he was called the American Chekhov, and perhaps some other poets. It looks easy. Just try it.
Yeah.
As
Oh
we
yeah.
know, just try it. But that plain spokenness, that kind of minimalist approach to things is just beautiful. And this poem is a great example of that, by the way, although it's also an example of how it is deceivingly simple. There's so much more in this poem than you might get at first glance. So the poem is Happiness, and I'm reading it out of this particular volume here, the collected All of Us. Um, and so let me just read it. Happiness. So early, it's still almost dark out. I'm near the window with coffee and the usual early morning stuff that passes for thought. When I see the boy and his friend walking up the road to deliver the newspaper, they wear caps and sweaters, and one boy has a bag over his shoulder. They are so happy they aren't saying anything, these boys. I think if they could, they would take each other's arm. It's early in the morning, and they are doing this thing together. They come on slowly. The sky is taking on light, though the moon still hangs pale over the water. Such beauty that for a minute, death and ambition, even love, doesn't enter into this. Happiness. It comes on unexpectedly and goes beyond, really, any early morning talk about it. Wow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, great poem. Great poem, and just fascinating. By the way, I was reading his wife Tess Gallagher's introduction into this volume, and one of the things she says in here, she quotes him as saying at one point, "Forgive me." This is on a piece of scrap paper near his typewriter he had written. "Forgive me if I am thrilled with the idea, but just now I thought that every poem I write ought to be called Happiness."
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, I've got a few things to say about this poem. What you wanna start us off? What strikes you? What really stands out to you?
You know, having just read a lot of poems, and I subscribe to both Poem a Day and the other one. You can get a daily poem, and then when it was happening, I subscribed to Ted Kuzer's American Life and Poetry, and I would listen to, as corny as he was, it was wonderful. The Writer's Almanac every
Oh,
single day, you
100%.
know,
Yeah.
and it enriches. It really does. It enriches your day to day. It gives you fortitude. There's a thing that I notice about the ones, at least the ones that I like the most, like The Wild Birds by Mary Oliver, or
Mhm.
uh, um, Tom Hennon's great poem, Did I Say This Before? Is they have this, like, if you're going to get me, apparently what you want to do is be very descriptive to sort of lay a platform
Mhm.
and then make a pivot. And the pivot seems to come out of nowhere, but you've been set up and guided along all the way. Like, it's just a machine. And this one pivots. Um, he's just describing the boys, the boys, the boys, the
Yep.
boys,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden it's the sky and the moon and the water. Like, suddenly the camera veers way out, and while you're reacting to that, he brings in beauty. It's the first time he talks about anything subjective,
Yeah.
and then he makes his point, and he makes his point in just the last 6 lines.
Right. Right.
Ah, like I'm sort of enamored of. It's like what it must be like to dance, to be like a pretty good dancer, and then dance with someone who really knows how to dance, and they sort of scoop you up, and they lead you, and you become more graceful. Like, that's what it is to be a reader of a poem like this. He just knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Terrific. Terrific analogy. So let me ask you a few questions about this. Who is it that's happy? Is it the boys
Oh, right.
or is it him?
That is, see, that is left absolutely up to the reader.
And I think it's him. And we
Yeah.
should say the narrator, but
Yeah.
I think it's Ray. I think it's Ray in this case. And that
Fair.
doesn't matter. The narrator, because look, we could see this as an omniscient narrator. He's not only describing what he sees, but he knows what's going. But for all we know, these boys are hate each other, wish they weren't out there delivering these damn papers, would rather be home. We don't know, and he
Yeah.
doesn't know. So he's sort of imposing that, and I think it's one little tell there. He's not only looking at it through a window; he's near the window. I mean, he's not. There's like a
Right.
separation. I mean, it's the artist, right? It's the artist observing. I always think of Jack Kerouac in this way. That person who's always on the outside a little bit and observing. They're not really in it, which
Yes.
which is beautiful. At the same time, there's that creates another issue. But I think it's him, and I think that's wonderful. But there's another thing that's troubling to me in this poem. They are so happy. Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
he's assuming it's them, and that's fine. They're so happy they aren't saying anything, these boys. I think if they could, they would take each other's arms.
Yeah.
Why can't they?
Because they're boys and it's 1967, you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. And I think there's a little, very, very subtle little sadness there, that too bad that these boys, he's projecting these feelings that they love each other, and they're bonding with each other, and they're out together enjoying each other, and they maybe subconsciously wish they could hug each other and hold each other, but they can't.
Yep. Yeah.
That word could.
Yeah.
If could, but they can't.
Yeah.
Applies, but they can't. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, it's really deftly done,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Yeah. And then also, like going on, like, it's interesting how often he sort of denigrates his own language, the usual early morning stuff that passes for thought,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then he doubles all the way back to that. Happiness goes beyond really any early morning talk about it. It goes beyond this poem. So
Yeah.
there's that sort of tacit admission, that he's not up to it. I mean, this is a
While he's
perceptive.
writing it, he's saying,
Yeah,
"We can't talk about it, but let me write about it. Let me talk about it." Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, man,
Man,
what a great poem. So I'm so happy that you chose this one.
me too.
I probably had read it sometimes in the past, but I didn't remember it. And when I reread it, it just like you, it knocked me out. Um, yeah, Carver was such an interesting guy, man. I
Have
want
you
to.
encountered? There's a thing about him. There's a thing he said. I was doing a little reading to get ready for this podcast, and there apparently, people, because he's sort of brutally realistic about the subjects in his short stories,
Yeah.
and apparently he was surprised and would say, I don't think of these people as awful,
Right.
like,
Right.
but everyone else thinks that I do,
Yeah.
which, that sort of speaks to, there's a thing that is wonderful in an artist. It isn't always wonderful when they're your friend, but they're kind of almost spectrumy about the way they think about things. Like they see it in this very indelible, clear way, and then they say what they see. And I have a few friends that are artists, and then they will then turn that lens on me, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, where is your bedside manner? And they will be genuinely shocked.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Yeah.
I'll tell you how I took that, and it's not inconsistent with what you're saying, but maybe it's a slightly different twist. Uh, he grew up around these people,
Yeah.
and he had an admiration for them, for the hard work and for the the grind, and there was, I think, his surprise almost kind of hints at, hey, these people are important too. We don't have to
Yeah.
write about kings and queens and the upper echelon of society. These people are worthy as well, and I'm surprised you don't. And I'm surprised that you think it's stark reality. I'm just describing their lives, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I I can tell you, and a lot of people can tell you, poverty makes people mean. I grew up around mean people,
Yeah.
and I was luckier than they were, and I had the American get out of jail free card. So things turned out the way they turned out, and I'm not ungrateful for that, but I do. It makes me a little, yeah, it makes me a little suspicious of knowledge workers and the educated. And of course, I am both of those things. And so I have that weird sort of
Right.
fight, flight, flee, fawn
Yeah.
thing with them. And being like a middle child and just being an affable guy, I will fawn from time to time. And there are times that I think I might want to fight more.
And then maybe a little Catholic guilt in there too.
Oh, God, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I wanted to read one other thing that I saw in Tess Gallagher's introduction to this
Yeah.
book here. And we haven't talked about it much, but I do think most people know him uh, as a short story writer.
Yeah.
When he died, those were the headlines: America's Chekhov, and then of course the film that you referenced. But just to kind of put a flag in how important poetry was for him, She says, it seems important finally to say that Ray did not regard his poetry as simply a hobby or a pastime he turned to when he wanted a rest from fiction. Poetry was a spiritual necessity. The truths he came to through his poetry involved a dismantling of artifice to a degree not even Williams, whom he had admired early on, could have anticipated. And I'm pretty sure she means William Carlos Williams there. Um, yeah, poetry. I think that he probably is a little bit overlooked as a poet because people instantly think of him as a short story writer. So
I'll agree.
And that's another reason I'm doing this podcast. I try to steer away from mainstream anthologized poets, not completely, but it's kind of like music, Peter. You know, a lot of my friends, I'm late 60s, so you know I kind of cut my teeth in the late 60s and early 70s, and a lot of contemporary people with me, that's all the music they're still listening to, man. And they will say things to me like, they don't make any good music. Then you're not listening. You're not paying attention. There's a lot of great music. And I think the same with poetry. A lot of people only know the anthologized poets, and there are amazing contemporary poets and poets like Carver that are typically not thought of.
Right.
So anyway, thank you again for choosing.
Thank you.
Carver.
Oh.
Before I ask you to read this poem to take us out, Peter, tell us what you're up to. I know you have. I noticed from your website you do have some shows coming up. Most of them are close to home up there, but I think you're traveling a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in June. I'm doing a run in the Midwest, and then I'm sticking a lot closer to home these days. I very late in life became a parent. I've got a 3.5-year-old, and here I am about to turn 56.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. It's also you learn your deficiencies. But
I can relate, by the way. I am 6. I just turned 69 the other day, and I have a 14-year-old.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh
So
that's just about spot on.
yeah, we're in there together, brother.
Woo!
You
Yeah,
learned your deficiencies, you were saying.
well, right. You know, you got to bring all the tools to bear, and you know, I don't have the energy that I would have had, but I do have.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just been forced to become a more patient person long before this kid came along, and a more attentive person. And you know that seems to be what they need. So I'm just trying to stick to New England. I know I'm doing a California run, and I know I'm doing
Are you
I
back
know
in
I'm doing
Wisconsin?
another Midwest.
Yeah, you're
What?
doing some Wisconsin dates, aren't you?
Yeah, and that becomes strategic because my parents still live on the northwest side of Milwaukee, and so that's kind of I restrict my touring to places I can go and make money in
Yeah.
a short amount of time, and then places I can go and visit dear ones, and maybe even bring the kid along. You know,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
it's kind of
That's
my deal. But you can find me on all the sites, and you know, I'm also doing kind of the same thing. I don't put poetry online, but I try to speak in thoroughgoingly civil, nuanced language on the social media sites, and then you know try not to get drawn into arguing.
although I have to say I really enjoyed your little song about, I shouldn't say little song, that sounds like
Oh no, they're all little.
your song uh having to do with Steve Jobs. Was it Steve Jobs asshole
Asshole
in
in
space?
space.
That
Yeah.
was great, man. That was great. Uh,
Oh,
okay, Peter, will you do us the honor of reading this poem to take us out?
you got it. Thank you, John. Happiness. So early, it's still almost dark out. I'm near the window with coffee and the usual early morning stuff that passes for thought. When I see the boy and his friend walking up the road to deliver the newspaper, they wear caps and sweaters, and one boy has a bag over his shoulder. They are so happy. They aren't saying anything, these boys. I think if they could, they would take each other's arm. It's early in the morning, and they are doing this thing together. They come on slowly. The sky is taking on light, though the moon still hangs pale over the water. Such beauty that for a minute, death and ambition, even love doesn't enter into this. Happiness. It comes on unexpectedly and goes beyond, really, any early morning talk about it.
Raymond Carver.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. Peter, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Oh,
I wish you all the best. And
yeah, you
get
too.
down to Texas. I'd love to catch you.